Welcome everyone to our House 113 candidate forum with the North Area Democrats. This is part of our relaunch of the North Area Democrat Club. Smarell Nicole Brown is going to be taking over as chair of that club, and she'll be joined by Celia Ballou, the area precinct coordinator. Tonight we have with us Marvin Pendarvis. He'll be joining us, and we did reach out to Renisha Holmes. Unfortunately, it looks like she wasn't able to join us, but we do recommend you seek her out on social media so you can find more about her. So I am going to turn this over quickly to Smarell. She's introduced herself a couple of times, but I would love for her to tell you guys a little bit more about herself because we're really excited for her to be joining us in the North Area Democrats.
All right. So thanks again to Kelly for spearheading all of this for me. And thank you, Sajid, for all of your help. And thank you to everyone with CCDP that has actually believed that I can actually take this challenge on. I am mostly known for being the daughter of Model. We've created 7 businesses here in Charleston, South Carolina. I also am a holistic health coach. So I coach people on how to transition into living healthy lifestyles, and I hold them accountable. And I also just created a children's program called The Raising Sages, where we focus on the things that I feel like are missing out of the public school system, which is character development, entrepreneurship, holistic health, and civic engagement. I spent some time on Tom Steyer's campaign, opened up a business on Reynolds Avenue, and that is why I am here, because I'm really passionate about real change in North Charleston. I changed my zip code because I believe in this community. And I am really excited to be joined today by Mr. Marvin Pendarvis. And Kelly, how are we gonna set up these questions? How are we gonna do the timing for this? Since we only have one candidate.
Yeah, I think since we're running a little behind, we'll probably be able to do the 2 minutes for the most part, but get to some of our extra questions hopefully this time.
Okay, Mr. Marvin, thank you so much for joining us tonight. If you could just go ahead and introduce yourself for those that may not know about you.
Yes, good evening, and thank you, and congratulations, Smarell and Kelly and Sajid and all that you all are doing with the relaunch of the North Area Democrats. My name is Marvin Pendarvis. I'm a North Charleston native, born and raised in Charleston Farms, educated in the Charleston community, went to University of South Carolina for college and law school, and returned back to the North Charleston area in 2014 to practice law. In 2017, was fortunate enough to run and win a special election for the House of Representatives, and served for the last 3 years fighting for issues that I believe are important to the people of North Charleston and House District 113.
Okay, so let's get into our first question. Start this. All right, our first question goes to the eviction rates, which I know that you're familiar with. North Charleston has one of the highest eviction rates in the country. What do you think the real problem is, and how will you address if reelected?
I appreciate the question, and the reality is evictions are an issue that have plagued North Charleston for some time. As I've told anyone under the sound of my voice, coronavirus has only aggravated what has already existed long before we got to this point. In 2017, the Princeton University Eviction Lab issued a report that cited North Charleston as #1 in the entire country in eviction rates. And that was problematic. And it came to me and some of my colleagues, and we asked, well, how did we get to this point? And so much of what you see that has led to the evictions really at a root cause is we have not done enough to really invest in many of these communities. But on top of that, wages have continued to stay stagnant. We haven't done anything to really improve many of these communities. And so when you've got people who are living in homes that aren't seeing an increase in wages, but they've continued to have these expenses on top of them, on top of the fact that the landlord-tenant laws are more landlord-friendly, then you get the issue. And so one of the things that I did last year was I was a primary sponsor of the South Carolina Landlord-Tenant Act, basically trying to amend with the current law The Tenant Act has not seen any major amendments since the 80s. And so what we needed to do was one, go into the statute, find out why some of the laws were so landlord friendly, and clean up some of the things just so it's more user friendly, some of the language that had been a little antiquated, and make it under something that people can understand on the landlord and the tenant end. And so being able to do that was one thing that we went, but also we've got to look at it from a resource standpoint. Um, Last year in 2019, North Charleston, Charleston County started an eviction housing corp, and you saw that in many cities across the country. Oh, it's fine.
No, you're the only person, but we still got to keep time.
No worries, no worries.
Okay, so the next question. With the increased unemployment due to COVID-19, more people are having to be creative to find new sources of income. What type of resources are you going to put into place, or have you already put in place, for startup entrepreneurs and small business owners?
Well, I'll start answering that question by one of the things we have to be clear about how we identify small businesses, and that's something that we ran into with the initial round of the CARES Act, when you saw major multi-million billion-dollar organizations that were eligible for small business loans, but really the question became, did they need it? And so what that did was complicate for matters for people at the lower end of the pole, people who needed real small mom pop shops that needed it. And so one of the things that I think what we're working on is the governor started the Accelerated SC Committee that's geared toward making South Carolina, one, trying to reopen South Carolina, but also providing resources so that when we do reopen, we get money where it needs to be and support people where they need it. Small business is one of them. And so I would support measures like that. But more importantly, we go back into session sometime this summer to take up the COVID-19 budget. And it's about $1.9 billion that we got from the CARES Act that South Carolina will have the ability to administer. And so I will be pushing, and I know there are many efforts on both sides of the aisle that we use a lot of that money towards small businesses, and it's specifying that we need to make sure that we get the businesses that were left out in the initial rounds, many businesses that are owned by minority people, Black and brown people in minority communities, and many of the communities that have been neglected for a long time.
Thank you. Our third question. I ran a business in the middle of a food desert, which made it tough to find food conveniently. A lot of our community has little to no quality food stores nearby, and those without cars rely on convenience stores and dollar stores to feed their families. Yet there are still no concrete plans for a grocery store. What will you do to ensure that healthy food is accessible and affordable to all?
Yeah, one of the things that I've realized is if you look at North Charleston specifically, and you look at the southern end, it's been long declared a food desert. And what we realize is that means they have no access to a grocery store in close proximity. But one of the things that we're working on is, one, recognizing on a state level, what can we do to really change that? Because I had conversations with members of North Charleston City Council, reached out to members of County Council. I know the mayor, I talked to people in the mayor's office, and there had been concerted efforts on a number of fronts over the last several years to get a grocery store where they need it. And it's been unsuccessful despite many of the incentives that have been given out, where essentially many grocery stores were being given a red carpet that had been rolled out for them to come in, and they still haven't. And so we have to be creative. And so one of the things that I've been looking at is how can we work with national partnerships to, one, if we can't get the grocery stores to come to us, how can we increase the transportation to get people to the grocery stores at a reasonable rate? And so, my office has been looking into some programs that Lyft has nationally with many groups to try to increase the transportation aspect. But on top of that, I was a primary sponsor of the Opportunity Zone Enhancement Act. And if used the right way, opportunity zones can really transform low-income communities. And one of the tenets in the bill that I filed talks about food deserts and being able to get investors to come in to provide additional incentives on top of what the state, I mean, on top of what the city can provide and the county potentially can provide, and give more reason for a grocery store to come. The conversations have to continue. We have to continue to stay diligent in trying to pursue that. It's necessary. Health is wealth. We have done a bad job of giving access to the nutritional needs in low-income communities that have adversely affected African Americans. And so that's one of the things that I recognize. That's one of the things that we've been working on since we've been in office, and we'll continue to do that.
Thank you. Okay. With the rapid increase in development in our area, soon there will be no affordable housing left in Charleston. How will you help bring opportunities while still honoring the work of those preserving our community?
Well, when I ran 3 years ago, affordable housing was one of the issues that I've been passionate about and that I ran on. And we know in South Carolina, affordable housing is a real problem. In my opinion, housing is a fundamental right that must be protected because we all have the right to be in decent homes, in affordable homes, and we must make sure that we protect that. But what we've seen is in North Charleston, particularly where you've got a real bad affordable housing issue, but it's not unique to North Charleston, but certainly the problems are pronounced here. What we ought to be doing is one, incentivizing a lot of these developers that come into the communities and build. And so when I first got elected, my predecessor, Representative Seth Whipper and Representative David Mack, filed legislation, the Inclusionary Zoning Act. And what that bill did was simply say, developer, if you're going to come into North Charleston, let's say a neighborhood like Liberty Hill, you come into Liberty Hill, you want to build. Well, we'll let you build. We want you to build. We want you to build at below market rate. And to incentivize you to do that, we're going to make life easier for you. We're going to waive some of these fees. We're going to expedite the process so you don't have to wait in line to get some of these permits. And we're going to do everything that we can because we recognize the need for affordable housing, and we want you to pour into that system. And so inclusionary zoning, the bill was voted down. I was certainly disappointed in my colleagues that did not see the need for that, but that's something we want to revisit. And we'll continue, sounding the alarm on that because we recognize housing is that important. But that's only one tool in the toolbox because we have to preserve a lot of communities. We know the ills of gentrification here historically in Charleston, from downtown to North Charleston, from North Charleston to rural areas in Berkeley and Dorchester counties. And so one of the things that I'm hoping is through my opportunity zones legislation, we'll be able to get these investors, the developers to come into these communities and say, I'm going to build, but I'm not going to displace you. I'm going to make sure you have what you need and you can continue to stay in your home.
Okay. When natural disasters occur, it is mostly lower income areas that are impacted the worst. Those areas are heavily populated by Black and Brown communities. What programs or regulations are necessary to protect air and water quality for all of Charleston County?
So great question. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe South Carolina is like fifth, I believe, nationally in water quality. And so we know we've got a problem. One of the things that I've noticed is if you look back, one of the biggest problems with the regulations that in the United States, first and foremost, has been the federal government, who has traditionally been the ones that dealt with air and water regulations in regards to pollution. However, the current administration's rollback of some of the environmental protections over the last few years has put the ball in a lot of legislators' courts, folks like myself, to really take matters in our own hand. And so when you look at issues like that, you look to the states. I'm a big proponent of, I don't purport to know it all, but I like to look at places that are doing things successfully. And our neighbors to the north in North Carolina, there are two bills there that deal with a lot of the issues that we want to address. And I would love to be an advocate for that in the South Carolina House of Representatives. You've got a bill that deals with the environmental quality funding and requiring industries to disclose their permits about the pollutants that they discharge, in addition to another bill that was filed there, the polluter pays bill, which will essentially make industries that essentially cause or contribute contamination responsible for the cost of the cleanups. And so we know that we've got to take care of things. A lot of the rollbacks have empowered us as legislators. And one of the things we have to do is be bold and be active. And there are a number of my colleagues that have sounded the alarm on this. And we have to continue to do that. We know in Charleston, particularly a lot of the issues we deal with environmentally. I'm on the board of the Low Country Alliance of Model Communities, and we've talked about water quality, we've talked about air quality, and the impact that it can have on our communities, African American communities. And so I would be a proponent of that and continue to spread the word because it's important and it's one that we need to take action on.
Okay, thank you. So that actually completes our questions, but because you are the only candidate, do you mind taking a few of our extra questions?
Well, that's fine.
Okay. So let's do this one. What solutions do you propose to address transportation problems in Charleston County, such as congestion and access to public transportation?
So if you poll people throughout the entire county, and in fact, if you poll people throughout the entire region, the Tri-County area, one of the number one issues, if not the number one issue you hear is transportation and congestion. Everyone complains about traffic on 26. Everyone complains about the length of time it takes to commute to work. And everyone complains about the lack of access to alternative modes of transportation. And so one of the things that we're all well aware of here in Charleston County is the new bus rapid transit line that's looking to be online. Once one, the funding comes in, and two, we were able to build it. And it's my hope that additional money that comes through in the CARES Act, this fourth round, will be able to go towards transportation. And so that's one of the things that we recognize. I was a part of an effort to look at what could be done at the old Naval Hospital, which sits in my district, and make it a space that could really enhance transportation in some aspects. You know, if we look at the future of communities, these are communities where you've got easy access to transportation, and that we're not clogging the roads with so many vehicles. One of the issues that we see is that for good reasons, understandably, the motor vehicle is the preferred mode of transportation. But we have not done a good job of creating a space where other modes of transportation are available. I was the primary sponsor of the Complete Streets bill, where we looked at how the Department of Transportation could build its roads, contemplating the mobility and the bikeability with bikes and pedestrians to make sure that they have access to the roads as well. And so the communities that we're looking at in North Charleston will be ones where you're able to bike, where you'll be able to walk, where you're able to be transported by car, and you've got a rapid transit system that's able to carry you. We know that so many of the problems that plague our communities, especially communities that I represent, are because of lack of access to transportation. And so I believe that we'll be able to do that at that time.
Thank you. Let's go to that one. Let's just go with that one. I think we'll do one more and then let you do your closing remarks. More and more people move to the county. How would you manage increased demands on infrastructure and on public service, such as equipment, staffing, and budgets?
So there's an old saying that the wheels of expansion don't stop for anyone. And so a byproduct of us growing and developing is the attraction that it has to people from outside. And so they move here and they populate our city. And the question is, is our infrastructure in a position to support that? And over the years, we haven't been in that position. We haven't been able to keep up with the kind of growth that we've seen in our county, in our city. And so it's all about smart growth. It's all about planning properly. One of the things that I've been working on, as I alluded to in my previous answer about complete streets, is how we can encourage the Department of Transportation to be smart in how they build. But also, it goes back to, as legislators, we're limited in what we can do on a local level to a degree, because a lot of what we deal with in Columbia has some statewide impact. But what I can say is the conversations need to be had. I'm all about this intergovernmental community where legislators are talking to councilmen on the county level and the city level. We're talking to the school board and finding out how all these issues impact us. And when it comes to the infrastructure, we've got to come up with a comprehensive plan for how we're going to be able to support the growth that we're seeing. And I believe that much of the legislation that I've been a champion of will go toward that when it comes to opportunity zones, when it comes to with smart development, when it comes to the complete streets, and a number of other legislation that deals with building and transforming our communities in a meaningful and in a smart way.
I actually have one more COVID-19 question.
Okay.
We have already seen a major impact on tourism in Charleston because of COVID-19, devastating effects to our hospitality and retail industries. This will likely continue through the fall. What do you see as essential steps the County Council can take to help support economic recovery while continuing to keep residents safe?
That's going to be very important. If we look at the what Charleston, North Charleston, and this region is anchored on, is hospitality and tourism, and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry for our area, and it's taken a huge hit as a result of COVID-19 because people aren't able to go to their restaurants or go to the clothing store, the department store, and get what they're accustomed to getting. And so what you're going to see, and I think one of the things that county councils will be able to do is an influx of money from the CARES Act, but also pay attention to what will be coming out with our COVID-19 budget. I mentioned that earlier, and I want to stress on that again. I don't know when. I've been told by leaders at the State House that we'll meet probably after the primary, which is June 9th. And so it'll probably be sometime toward the end of June. But when we go back, we'll be taking up the $1.9 million COVID-19 budget, and it's going to provide a lot of relief to local municipalities. That's what some of the money came down for the CARES Act to do, and some of it's going directly to areas that need it. And so really, it's going to be me, people in positions like myself, to talk with members of county council, to one, advocate at the state level for that money to go directly to addressing, especially in a place like Charleston, but also having a conversation with people in county council like Teddy Pryor or any of those guys and say, hey, this is what we need to be doing. Here's some suggestions on how the county can be creative in addressing this, because we know it's very near and dear to our area. It's the anchor of our local economy, and we'd be negligent if we didn't do anything to support it. And it's my personal hope that we recognize and take into account all of the industry partners when it comes to that, especially in places that I represent.
Hey, thank you so much for your time, Marvin, and thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for being engaged and concerned citizens. Marvin, could you go ahead and do your closing remarks and let people know how they can find more information about it?
Well, I want to thank you all again. I opened up by talking about our journey to the State House and now in there. And when I ran for the office 3 years ago, I shared with the people of House District 113 a vision of economic inclusion, affordable housing, better education, because as a 27-year-old kid who was elected to office for the first time, those issues were issues that I saw as problems when I was a kid, when I was growing up here, issues that are important to the people. And I look at my story and my journey to get to this point as representative of the larger Charleston story, the larger story of South Carolinians, people who have had impediments in their way, people who have not been able to see their communities work for them, people who have felt neglected at every turn in life, and people who are looking for their elected leaders to do something, to be active, to engage them in some meaningful way. And so we haven't been perfect in what we set out to do. One of the things that I tell people, we haven't always been successful in Colombia, but one of the things we've been able to do is navigate the political waters in such a way where we have achieved some legislative victories. We were able to get some advances on the complete street bills. We were able to elevate the conversation surrounding opportunity zones and those pieces of legislation that will help communities like Liberty Hill. They'll transform areas like Robinwood and Brownsville and Somerville, and they will help elevate the communities on the southern end of North Charleston, where many businesses are owned by people that look like me. And so I asked the people of House District 113 that the commitment that I made to them 3 years ago, we still have work to do, and we're not finished on that journey. Let's continue to take that walk. Let's continue to finish what we started. We want to build upon our successes, but we want to address our challenges and be better before. And so I just ask that you push forward with me. And if you need to reach me, you can visit my website at www.marvinpendarvis.com. You can send me an email at info@marvinpendarvis.com. It's been an honor of a lifetime serving in the House of Representatives, and I look forward to many more years of service as the people of House District 113 will allow me to have. And thank y'all for having me.
Kelly, did you want to have any closing remarks? Are we doing our?
Oh, just thanks, Marvin, so much for joining us for this North Area relaunch. Smarrell, great job. We did want to let you guys know that you can find out more about our candidates at the Charleston County Democrat webpage. They have a whole section on candidates, and they should be posting this over to the YouTube channel. And the North Area Democrats and the West Ashley Democrats have another forum tomorrow night at 6:30 for County Council 6. And Smarrell, how can they find out more about the North Area Democrats?
To find out more about the North Area Democrats, you can find us on Facebook at North Area Democrats, as well as Instagram, North Area Democrats or North Area Dems. Thank you guys all for tuning in, and I hope that y'all all rest well.